Okay. Yes. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Historic Area Commission meeting on Thursday, December 8th. First order of business is always to get a quorum, so we're just going to have all commissioners and guests state their names for the record. So Laura Fontana.
Justin Day.
Mary, if you were to leave us.
Kevin Wade. Matthew Lovely.
And Layla Hammer.
And Jeff Bergstrom.
Thank you. So we have a quorum to conduct business this evening. So we call the attention to the Historic Area Commission meeting minutes from September 8th, 2022. So can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Have a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? No discussion? Okay. Can I approve the motion to accept the minutes as presented? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. All right, so I think we're doing a little change. So I believe number 7 on the agenda is running slightly behind schedule. So we are going to start our discussion with 37 to 39 West 3rd Street. So this was, some of us may recognize this dwelling, or actually this plot of land. So we have an application in front of us to take the plot of land and make them equal lots versus right now the 2 lots are unequal. You know, one's larger than the other, so it appears we're going to have a request to make them equal size so that these 2 dwellings can be built on the 2 lots. Does that make sense to everybody? So who do we have representing the Dias-Santos?
Francis is.
Oh, well, thank you, Francis, for coming. So just share with us, again, if you could just reconfirm what I just said, just to make sure we're all on the same page around what you're looking for from the application, to start moving the common lot line.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, currently there is a 18-foot, approximately 18-foot wide lot and a 32-foot wide lot. And we would like to move the property line, as you said, to make them roughly equal in size. I think we have one lot, we're proposing one lot to be 26 and a half feet and the other one's 25 feet.
Okay.
Well, we're trying to stay away from the existing house that's there. But actually, I may want to get a little closer because that will allow us to move to get any kind of equipment that it's in on side where the park is versus trying to get anything in between our new construction and the existing house. So we're kind of thinking actually having the park side lot 37 to be a little wider than 39.
So right now, the drawing shows 5 feet between you
Yeah,
and the next
right.
property, right?
Right.
That, and you're looking to keep that or make it a little tighter so you get more space on the other side? Are you
I
looking?
thought I had 6.5 on that side. I don't have the color.
I see 5.
That's on the.
The lot to
30,
39, let's call it.
oh, really?
I'm afraid
Am I
the
right?
question here is, yes, but the question here is, we don't have a plan for the application. Just, I hate to be sort of procedural, but in terms of the application, we would need to have a plan
I did
showing. Well, we have the building plans.
No, I
For the
submitted- I
application.
Submitted a proposed, subdivision plan.
Oh, yeah.
So that one didn't make it in this package. That's okay.
I'm sorry. Secretary.
And
So we're only going to be able to base the information on. All right, so Jeff, let's take a step back. So for the application for the subdivision of the plots,
Yes.
you had something.
Yes, the plan was submitted in a timely fashion and I think duplicated, but the lady that does this left work unexpectedly and won't be back for I don't know how long, a week or two. Or 3, and it was a mess. I thought we got everything. Are you sure there's no?
Well, this,
Not in this package, and not in the email. And the question I had is like, is the plan that you have one that represents the initial intent, or the one that's, if we're gonna approve one, it has to be, because you're saying you might want to change, you might want to make it this, or versus making a little bit more of that. That's a bit of the challenge, that it has to be approving one thing or the other, as opposed to theoretically approving something with a moving line. So is there a clear determination as to what you want to do?
Yeah, at this point, yes, we would like 37 to be 26.5 feet wide. And 39 to be 25 feet wide.
Jeff, where are these plans?
20 Delaware Street. It'll probably take me half an hour round trip. I don't know, a little less.
Well, I think we need them,
I think you do too.
unless you can.
No, I'm looking desperately to see.
They're not in the packet.
No. Communist.
So,
Well, you got it directly from
From whom?
Mirstone.
Mirstone. So if I look on.
And I sent it to the info at Texas City. Or I sent it to house plans.
Right.
Let me scroll, I just pick those up.
Paul Hayden.
Here we have the 2 application covers, and we have the plan.
I can show you on the cell that this thing came in.
we're not denying that it didn't come in time, it's just
Oh,
hard
no,
for
no.
us to.
But
I
I don't know how big. I can go to a different place and print this.
Can you email it
Well,
to
can
the
you just
police and
email it
have
to all
them
of us?
print it?
Let me see.
I live to serve.
Actually, you served
you
the
at
city
least-
very well.
So Layla, you didn't get it in an email?
No. I'm trying to pull it up.
Should at least have Jeff. Email it. All right, sorry for the delay. We only have one set of information.
While we are waiting for the document that you submitted, but has been lost in transit, could you just give us a summary of what you want to do? Why? And then when the document comes out, we can act quickly.
Well, I want to re-subdivide the lots to be roughly the same size. And then I want to go to semi-detached, 2 semi-detached dwellings on each lot, both being identical. As plans show, they would be 20 feet in width, 50 feet in length. I believe we're proposing to build a 1.5 on the front property line. Which would line up with the other houses on that side, on that block. And to the rear of the property, we're proposing attached to the house, 10-foot open porch with the deck above it on the 2nd floor. And that's about it. It's on a crawl space because it's in the flood plain. We considered options for having the property taken out of the flood plain. But there's too much of a risk of impacting the neighboring home. This is 41. I think the previous owner came to the same conclusion that was the same option.
Right.
Your scale of the home is appropriate for that line of.
That's what we need to do.
Well, we have to discuss that too, because.
Yeah, it's a little larger. They're always have very little on the small side. But I try not to get it too out of proportion. I'm not having a half story on the third floor, so I'm moving it to 2 story. And keeping the issue as flat as I can for the pitch, which I believe the previous submitter was similar.
A couple of things to that point that we don't have here. We also would need the site plan just showing the depth, not just of the depth of the property as we see in the floor plan, but in relationship to the whole lot size and to the properties on either side. That's typically one of the documents you would need to have a complete application for new construction. The other thing.
Excuse me, I'm talking about just the front.
No, I'm talking about a site, like if you look at the list of what
Like
needs to be
looking
done.
down
with
on the
new
property,
construction.
we'd like to see how it's in relation to the other homes, how far.
You
You
need
know,
a
you can
site
say
plan,
50
yeah.
feet, but it would be nice to see it compared to other properties, because then we can understand what 50 feet back means, right? Compared to the length of the other homes. So you gave us the height, which we can roughly gauge, but it's the length that we like to see in comparison to others.
Yeah, it's, if you look on the application, typically I always take that kind of like an education. There's always a checklist
Good job.
of what needs to be done, of what we need, and the site plan is one of them. And also, if there are ever any questions, Marika or Jeff can always give you my contact info, and, anybody can always feel free to reach out.
Yeah, when you say site plan, I'm just thinking of our site.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's-
You want a larger.
Well, you have some of it on here, on the lot, you're sort of showing the depth, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're seeing, like, according to this, you're pretty much like your building is extending in depth about what, 10 to 15 feet beyond the adjacent house. So that's why it helps if we have that detail on a plan, because in new construction, we talk about a site plan. We're showing property line, existing site features like buildings, sidewalk, driveways, where is, if you're putting any landscaping or hardscaping on the site or any walkways, that helps look at everything and improve everything at one time, because it's part of the application. So that is one thing that would be helpful to have also.
So just, Leila, on the previous application for that, how big was that?
I can revisit the depth and pull it out for what they had done, the Garrity's, and we can have similarities.
Yeah.
And because that was a single home versus second home. The other thing is when you compare with the previous one where the concept had been approved and they had actually reduced the peak of the roof to 26 feet, not 28 as you have it. And one of the ways they adjusted that is they had put the ceiling heights at 8 feet for the first floor and the second floor. And that was how they had kind of right sized it. So the previous concept that had been accepted for the street was slightly higher than the adjacent one, which is I think 24 feet, but it was 26, not 28. You're showing your peak at 28. And these.
Yeah, I know, because they're right, he only had 32 feet width on his house,
Mhm.
I have a total of 40. So I'm probably gonna be like 16 inches higher, just following the same pitch. But you're saying you also reduced the ceiling height? on
They reduced the ceiling height, yes, because that was a whole conversation about the massing.
Yeah.
And particularly since yours sort of is reading as sort of adjacent, townhomes or like half the duplexes. That was one thing that they had resolved in that way. So it reduced it and it allowed for like a sequencing down towards the property next to you, which is quite lower. So that is one thing that's a reference point too.
Okay, so now that we have the preliminary. So. Trying to figure out where your property line is.
Yeah, because this is, the drawing is showing 5 feet.
I see 25
Hearing in mind,
and
It's hard to read, isn't it? Yeah.
Well,
It's okay.
I had printed up big ones for you guys.
It's just that the elevation is showing 5 feet between the end walls. While the proposed site plan that's here is actually showing 6.5 feet on one side to the property line, and I'm not sure if the edge of the house goes to the property line. And I'm taking glasses off, because that way I can kind of put my nose on spec. You know, my
Yeah,
old
well,
people,
that-
that's what we do
Yeah, well, that was,
prior,
no, that's what should be on here.
okay, so,
Now we're thinking of changing that to 6.5. That matches. It's,
I mean, I see 26.5 and I see 25.
Okay.
Um,
and there's other side.
I see the house. Yeah, I guess that says 6.5.
yeah.
Still says 5.
This is half of one.
Well, it says 5 feet on the one closest to the park,
Yeah,
but you want to change that.
no, I think we want to change the one on the other side. I'm just confused at which one we're changing. Yeah,
The one, but the other one says 5 too.
Oh, yeah, you're right, I was wrong, that's 6.5, yeah.
yeah, you see.
You're right, that says 5, and that should be 6.5.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, that's what we want now, 5 here and the 6.5 here. I think that's.
You want the 6.5 between you and the house next to you.
No, that's how.
No,
it's
that's how
proposed
it
on there.
shows
We
the
want
drawing.
to change it to make that 5.
5.
So this is how we want it, it's not how it's shown now. It's wrong.
Okay, so you want 5.
Yes,
All right,
yes.
Okay, I'm just trying to see if that says.
And you want 6.5 on the other side. So he's flipping them.
Okay. I hate to say it, they both say 5, but we're gonna go with,
Really?
I think so.
The topo plan says 6 and, if I'm looking at the topo plan says 6.5 on this side and 5 on the other. The drawing, on the other hand, where this says 6.5, the drawing says 5.
So we
So-
want this to be 6.5,
Yeah, the right's gonna be 6.5 and the left is gonna be 5.
and this is gonna be 5.
And yeah, right facing. If I were to take the northeast is gonna be,
So this is right, what we see on here, the 5 feet is
That
right,
was right
and you're
from our
adding the
original
6.5.
intention.
All right.
but I think what I would wanna make sure is that we disassociate two things. Because one, if this wants to be approved for a subdivision annotated floor, it should be just for like the splitting of the lots.
Yeah, that's what I think we're gonna do.
Versus
separately.
approving this as a site plan, because that we need something with more detail showing the depth of the building, the relationship to the adjacent building. For the new construction component.
Oh, he's leaving? Oh, okay. Is everything okay? Ah, all right, thank you.
So, excuse me, the previous applicant submitted the site plan and looking for
Mhm.
incorporating all that.
Oh, yeah.
Just have to change.
Yeah,
So I'll go back to whoever did that. and we'll work on that. Okay.
they had developed the site, they had worked with an architect. I had had 3 meetings, virtual meetings with their architect. I had 2 meetings with them. The consultation process that's set up to do that we can meet so that when things come to hack, at least from the perspective of whether they meet the guidelines, we can push that out. It's also more expeditious. You don't have to wait a month in between. At least you have questions with your designer. We can kind of go through those.
I met Mr. Fried Ziegler out there,
Mhm.
so I think we might have done it.
Yeah, and I can pull out, I mean, or Rick can pull out the previous application and see who did that.
These were actually. Fill out. So. Yeah, they they did this like neighborhood content, and then they provided information on some of the other pictures of the other
Yeah.
houses, so we could kind of mentally get a better visual. Um, and that, their house was going to, can't remember what we,
Well, their house had like and I have the site plan and
That was a single house on the two lots.
yeah. And they had,
You could just administratively combine the two lots. But this one, we can't move the line because it's in the historic district. So administratively, we could move the lot if it wasn't in the historic district, but.
and the other thing is for them is that their overall building depth was 54 feet, but they had the front part that was 2-story, that was like around, let's say 25, and then the back was a 1-story. So in terms of relationship with the space, that was kind of different, as opposed to yours is 50 feet full depth on 2 stories, based on the plan. Just for comparison purposes.
they started out at 28, but we made them, and we only approved them to go to 26.
Yeah. We thought I'd actually let you know a little bit higher and we sort of. approved them
Okay,
for that-
all right,
for that.
so going back just to this, so. How do we? Because the drawing was incorrect, right? He's flipped these numbers around, it's fine. If we, are there any other questions about does everyone understand what he's doing? 6.5 on the side and 5 over.
Yeah, but he
here,
needs
so
to
we flip
correct
it on.
that drawing.
He
That's
needs
part
to
of the
correct-
document.
Yeah, yeah,
If we're looking at two different actions, one is to approve that resplit. That's one.
that's all we're doing right now.
Right, and then the other is to determine whether or not the sense of the community will approve, because we're here to not represent this, but to represent the community. So when you come in with missing information about the structure you're going to build in relation to adjoining properties, that's why the commission is here, to again express the sense of the community. We're not rubber stamps, but we do apply an understanding of what residents of the town expect. Is that fair enough?
So I think what we'll do is we'll approve. So Jeff, we approved this.
And he can proceed to try to get the city council to approve a re-subdivision.
That's the next step.
And it's gonna take a while for that to happen, and then
He can come back. with
he's
all
gonna
the
come back with
information.
building plans, because he'll just have the lot line moved over, he won't be able to build it.
Okay, so from us, it goes to city council. So we're approving it to really go to city council, is that? We're saying we approve the movement of the line.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
it goes to city council and then the planning commission and then. the city council. It's gonna be-
You have a little bit of a. There's a few additional meetings you'll be attending in a few.
Sounds like it. I thought he was gonna be able to do that administrative. But you can't, because it's in the historic district. Okay.
On the historic district, I don't believe.
All right, so. Any other questions? So Leila, you're okay with
Yeah, I mean,
just approving this for now?
yeah, within the district, there are lots that are sort of narrower, longer lots, and particularly along that area, so I don't think that would be.
Right, so we're just approving the lot sizes basically with the clearance on each side, and then the house will be something separate.
Yeah.
So, does anyone want me to make a motion?
What would the words to the motion?
Yeah,
be?
that's what. So, yeah, we,
Well,
okay,
or could you approve the re-subdivision into one lot being 25 foot wide and one lot being 26.5 foot wide? That way, it would work either way I do it. Can we do that?
So we have a motion.
well, hold on, wait, let's talk about that, so. Because you specifically said, well, this one's gonna be 25 and this one's gonna be 26 and a half. So,
Well, we're not 100% certain, but if we do, I think a foot and a half would matter to you.
It does.
We would have someone. You don't need that acres.
Well, either way, but one lot's gonna be 25 feet.
Well, what, can you just say one lot will be and one lot will be and let it go at that?
That's what I was trying to suggest.
Yeah. but I guess we're worried about but the spacing between, it makes the difference with the spacing.
He hasn't shown us where he's gonna set the house yet.
Yeah, but
You're
this is
implying
the-
that the house is gonna
the lot.
shift, but he has to accommodate other things. He's asking for drawing a new line down the middle.
I understand that, but where he draws the line, I get it. So, but he made it very clear on the drawing that he wants to leave 5 feet between this property and this house.
We'll have a chance to take a look at the building design and it's
I think
But your
just,
street
But then
is
you're
showing you
moving.
5 feet. Your streetscape's showing the 5 feet on that side, right?
I think just for,
based on your, well, you just
Jeff, for practical purposes,
you
this
just
is a
told us to
plan.
change it. Yeah.
When we approve a plan, you typically approve a drawing. It's approving something saying it can be a drawing with a line that's here in the middle, or it can be a drawing that's with a line a foot and a half over there.
Right.
Is that something that's,
Well, he's gonna have to get this, what you approved, redrawn and then resubmitted.
but he'll have the flexibility of
That will go
redrawing
to
it as
city
A or
council.
B,
right.
Yeah. and
right?
maybe the planning commission.
Yeah, I can't do that with, I can't do that with the
Yeah.
subdivision.
Right.
That's
I have
it.
to be specific. I'm just saying, if it makes that much difference to you, if it's one way or the other.
I'm just saying administratively, and this is why I'm deferring to Jeff, I don't know if the commission can approve an either or kind of site plan, that's all. I understand what you're trying to do. I understand that the principle of subdivision seems to be something that everybody's okay with. I don't know how much flex there is to approve a plan A or plan B of said subdivision plan, where the center line is undefined at the time of approval.
It goes down.
And maybe I'm being very legalistic, but that's just the question I'm raising.
Pick one.
Well, I mean, maybe we're
Yeah.
recommending it to city council and then, the exact wording can be presented to city council. So we're recommending that we are comfortable with the subdivision.
Into one width lot and another width lot. We're
Right.
not specifying one is on the north end or one's on the south.
Right, because
end. We're just
I think we have to take for now that we haven't seen this second part yet, right?
Right. When we see that, we might
So-
object.
Yeah,
to
but the
placing it.
drawing, if we're approving this drawing, I feel like we're approving a drawing, and the drawing has specific dimensions on it.
We're approving a request.
I think we have a drawing. Like, you're approving this drawing.
No, I'm approving a request.
Well,
He
Yeah.
has a lot, the total width of his property is known. He's asked that we approve subdividing it, one being X feet, the other being Y feet. X and Y add up to the total width of the property. That's sufficiently rational for me. He owes the city details. But in terms of approving a resplit of property that he owns, I think is an action that's legitimate for the Historic Area Commission.
well, I feel like he presented this drawing to us to make a determination, to give us an idea of what he was going to do. This is what we're gonna move through to city council. I guess the city council, when it goes to city council, what is he gonna bring them?
That drawing.
That would be or an altered drawing.
Right. So,
Consistent with what we have approved.
I didn't know you were part of the subdivision process. I thought you just had to
neither,
basically sign off on the concept, on the idea, as he was stating it.
And we just
Well,
take
just
a
approve it.
motion and have a vote, and if it gets rejected, then B.
Well, if we, I mean, you seem to have indicated because this, I should say, those other drawings showed 5. That you wanted the extra space on the side to the park, right, so that you can get equipment. And it would be difficult to get equipment down the side with the home on the other side, right, for a variety of reasons, I'm sure. So it appears you want the space on the park side for construction reasons. Is that,
Yes.
am I accurate in saying that? So
I'm
then,
not saying we couldn't do it the other way, but I feel that this, thinking about it recently, we think this would be, make it easier for us because there's not a lot of room to work to begin with.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how you get over there anyway, but,
I
so,
mean, we would be able to do something on the other side of the 5 feet, but having more space on the other side is where there's not a house on the property.
Right.
lines.
right. So I would be in favor of approving this preliminary drawing, specifically the way it's written, 25 feet for 37, 26.5 for 39, with the 5 feet clearance on one side and the 6.5 on the other. That's what I would approve. Because then he's got to bring this to city council, in drawing. Anyone else feel to, you know? I agree with you. I agree with that. Okay. Matt, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I see that there's no problem either keeping it either way. I mean, I understand your point that we have this here, that we should be approving this, but it just seems that if he owns the property, he's gonna need access either way to the entire property. So at this stage, I'm comfortable either approving as is or approving with an unknown. It's a realistic.
Or you can withdraw and come back next month.
Well, he wants to get this moving through the
Yeah.
process, I'm sure, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we can come up to a reasonable conclusion so he can move forward. Now, just out of curiosity, at city council, if he decides to change it at city council, let's just say you present it to us, then you really think about, we approve this, let's just say, 5 and the 6.5. He goes to city council, he's thought about it, he wants to shift it the other way. Are they going to approve that without him having to come back to us?
So,
They're not.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think they're gonna wanna know that the Stark Area Commission approved the change in the lot line.
Yeah, I feel like city council wants us to approve the
Very specific.
specific.
And
Specific.
that particular drawing, since it's substantially the same thing, you can just change the numbers and approve it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to do that. I'm just saying, I feel like city council wants to know we approved a
Why don't we change
specific drawing.
the dimensions on that drawing? We all initial it or however we do it, and indicate that we have seen it and we have a vote.
I think that's what you're proposing, Laura.
That's what I'm proposing, that we're going with this drawing. With the 25 feet for 37, the 26.5 for 39, and that this drawing just needs to be corrected to show 5 feet and 6.5. Which you have to change before you bring it to them, because that's where we're about to approve.
We're gonna mark that drawing.
I already wrote it in. It'll be part of our motion. And then we'll turn it in with our recommendation.
Does anyone object to that resolution?
All right, so I'm gonna make the motion. So I make a motion for the 3739 for the moving of the common lot line to form 2 lots that will have respectively 37 West Third Street will be 25 feet. 39 West Third Street will be 26.5 feet. This drawing will be changed to show the clearance from the property line to the house to be 5 feet on the side of 37 closest to the next neighbor. Oh, sorry, 39 closest to the next neighbor. And for 37, it's going to be 6.5 feet closest to the park. Can I have a second?
Mr. Diaz-Ganis, is that adequate for your interests? as a member of this community.
Yes. Yeah. I would think you'd want to specify the width of the lot versus the side yard setback.
Well, didn't I say 25 feet and 26?
Yeah, she specifies the width of the lot. She's just saying that the annotated drawing, just to reflect that the correction to the annotated plan, because you presented the plan with.
Are you
theoretical
saying though that the
citing.
25 needs to be 26?
No, 37 is 26 and a half and 39 would be 25.
All right, scratch that motion, Carla. All right, so this is gonna be 26 and a half, sorry, this is gonna be 25, based on the 5 and the 6 and a half, right? Okay. All right, so, gonna make that slight correction, so that has to be changed on the drawing with these numbers as well, okay? All right, so the motion is for the 37 to 39 West Third Street, removing of the common lot line, is that 37 West Third Street is 26 and a half feet wide. 39 West Third Street is 25 feet wide. The drawing that we have needs to change those two numbers on the drawing respectively, as I just presented. And that the setbacks need to also change on the drawing, so it's 5 feet for 39 and 6 and a half for 37. Can I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any nays? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. So you just got to change your drawing. You? All right, so now, do you really want to start talking about the buildings, or do you want to get through the process first and then talk about the buildings? I guess the one
Well, you
thing,
can get through the subdivision.
right.
Well, I mean, if well, we might as well get started on this.
Well, I think, and maybe this is because once you start considering an application in terms of being able to have a determination on the building, there isn't the site plan showing all the elements required to have a complete application. So that means that you can't necessarily, I can't make a
Right.
recommendation because the application for new construction is incomplete in terms of all the documentation that TAC members have to review before they can make a decision. So I think if one wants to say that they can be shifted on this portion, we're talking consultation. But it is in the application, so unless one wants to say that that portion of the application is practically because the clock started, but the elements are incomplete. So if there's an incomplete application, I'm guessing the next step is to sort of deny this specific application because incomplete, provide some commentary, and then say, while you're going through the process of getting the zoning, the lots, we can definitely have consultations going with your designer and all that, so that then when you come to HAC, there will at least be a design that we have discussed that I'd be comfortable saying, okay, we reviewed it, it meets, HAC would still have to review it, but we'd have a process where you wouldn't have to wait a month each time to be able to make changes or modifications working with the design. I'm just sort of setting the big picture here.
Yeah,
as to where we are,
right.
both procedurally and for the commentary.
And then the other piece of it too, for the application is that, in the application, it does ask for information around materials and other, and it's much easier for us versus having to scavenge through the drawings to find all the materials is, a sheet of all the materials that are going to be used. So what the windows are going to be, what are the doors going to be, what is the roof going to be, what is the side? So it'd just be nice to have, Layla always calls it a cut sheet, but information on one page so that we can see the materials versus having to peck through and try to find them. It's just much easier for us to review an application that way as well. And so I think, like I said, there's additional information, I think, with size and comparison to the other properties, that it would be difficult for us to, I think, move this forward at this stage because we just don't have all the information. But you can do it in coinciding with going through the other process. You could consult with Layla. You could come back in January with more information, and then the commission could, probably make, have a better discussion and recommendations so that as soon as you go through the process, you can get started on the building. But I just feel we just don't have enough information to kind of move forward with having an adequate discussion. Does anybody feel differently? So go ahead, please ask
Well,
your
you've had a
question.
chance to look at it, I just. So if anyone has anything they've noticed on the drawing that they have a question about, or that they maybe don't feel comfortable with. I
So,
mean,
right,
I'd rather know now than wait a month from now, you know.
sure. I mean, I think, like I said,
Helps start the process.
streamline the process a little bit, sure. So I think that some of the things, like I said, some of us were on the commission when the previous owners of the property came through. And we had a lot of discussion about how big their home was going to be in relation to other homes around it. So I would say that I think the roof line at 26 feet, we already approved that. We would approve that again. I don't think we're gonna, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but 28 is just a larger mass to us. And they had 28 and we asked them to go to 26. So just to give you some context of, you know, what we were looking at compared to the other homes. We did ask them to bring their roof line down to 26, and then it got approved when they did that. Yours is, as Leila had indicated, kind of a 2-story all the way down. So where theirs was kind of a 2-story in the front and a 1-story going back. So there's a little bit more mass to the building there as well. And, you know, just, I mean, look, you usually for materials, you know, you've always been, you know, willing to work with us, you know, so I think the only thing I saw in there was when I saw a hardy plank, I was like, that's going to be tough because your public right of way and view is really almost all sides. So different than maybe some of the other homes you built where public view was a little bit different. So
I thought Mr. Gary had mentioned that we had approved.
on some areas.
right,
That's-
probably
yeah.
the back or the side, the one side. So
And to Laura's point, you don't have to wait until January. If you want to have these conversations with your designer to meet, because the biggest thing is going to be bringing down the roof line is one, but as I said, the Garrity's were at 54 feet in terms of depth, but they were step down depth, right? They were the 2-story on the street, they were 1-story behind that with the cascading of roof, which was consistent. You're actually a full depth, full height, full continuity, I think, when we're looking at the depth. So we can definitely have, if your designer is willing to have the conversations, I can give my contact info. We can actually go through a lot of these, have candid discussions and look at it, talk architect to architect and designer to designer, explain the detail, explain the intent, you know, as much as possible, come to a design that if we concur, it's a design that I can come with, send to HAC, and you know, and we fully agree. If you're still part of the conversation, if there are things where you choose not to agree and want to ask your designer to present things differently and bring that to HAC, that is also always obviously your prerogative. And then that just colors how I come to HAC and make the recommendation. The other thing is in terms of the extent and level of the drawings where you go to, if there are questions of why you want to have a double check with HAC, you can always do a first January consultation, which is looking at the bigger picture of all the elements. And if HAC gets behind that, then you can go typically 2 construction documents without having to come back to HAC, as long as I vouch and working with Jeff that it meets the intent that HAC approved. That also helps you not necessarily have to go to all of the design drawings and costs of doing all that, but making sure that you have a concept that's approved, everybody's going to be comfortable with moving there. So that's why the guidelines do have that way of having these interim work sessions before it comes to HAC. So you don't hit it cold.
Mr. Diascanis, you always have relief at the Historic Area Commission. It's easier for everyone if it never comes here. But if it does come here, you can express your reason, and we'll give you a fair consideration. I speak for myself.
Thank you.
yes, I mean, new construction always has to come to us, but you get plenty of opportunity to consult, right, prior to coming, so that when you come, the opportunity of getting a an approval, you've already kind of had the consultation. So it moves rather quickly once you do that.
And with the experience, one thing that we've found very helpful since we started implementing this is if you put me in touch, or if your designer reaches out to me, I will literally give him a list of exactly what he needs to give you as his client, so they have a full package when you come back. And that's part of the service that you get from them, because they understand the process.
Is the property still sloped or is it level now? It's sloped, okay. Yeah, so there's, kind of their house step down for height, I guess. Okay, any other questions or comments? So when we say did not declined, not that we're declining we're declining the application just because we don't have enough information, not the project
Declining to
itself.
consider it.
But you have the ability to come back, but let me just,
Well, I think I have their house plan, but you say the house stepped down, you're just talking about the elevation.
because the
But we're-
slope, the
yeah.
house followed the slope.
Well, the floor height can't, because it'll go down into the floodplain.
No, she's just talking about the volume and the massing, and then there were also, and you had like different, I suppose, at different points,
Yeah.
different elevations. That's what you did. So we took the maximum point, like when you look at some of the elevations, we took the maximum height compared to the building adjacent. That's all. That's how the site.
I mean, do you have these or is there?
So, yeah,
So,
why is that preferable?
Oh, the general massing is because when, particularly at that location where you are, you're not just perceived from the street, you're perceived from the street, but also from the battery park and from the public, kind of public right of way everywhere. And so the fact that they had the classic articulation of the 2-story front block, and then the lower story, which is kind of consistent with like what originally would happen, the front, and then in addition to the back, that's a 1-story and things like that. It kind of reduces the overall massing when you approach it from different directions. And it doesn't overwhelm, not I'm saying that yours does, but it doesn't overwhelm the adjacent houses that are sort of a smaller scale and depth. So that's where it comes all about the streetscape and looking at it from different directions. And if you do that, it also meets that gradient where you're going from lower towards progressively taller at the other end of the street. So it's multiple viewpoints.
so the other reason why we're declining, not tabling, is because of just timing of the application. So in our guidelines in the application process, we only have X amount of time that we have to do a final, we have to do some type of an approval. So if we don't, then it's deemed as to be approved, right? So we do have to decline the application. You'll get a letter from us stating why we're declining it, but you can come back. It's just not a decline, it's just a decline of what was presented today because there wasn't enough information. Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. So we're gonna, so I'm gonna make a motion. Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to decline the application as presented for lack of information presented with the application. So we didn't have enough information to review the application in complete and make a final determination.
Can we change the words to decline to consider?
You just have to say denied.
All right.
Denied or declined?
Declined, denied, yes. Can I have a second? All in favor of the decline? Aye. Okay. So again, any questions? You know what your next steps are? Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming in and for the conversation. And the commission will look forward to seeing you in that future meeting, and good luck with the subdivision component as well.
And you have them reach out to me as earlier if you want to do that.
Right.
That way we can get this rolling.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. So Kathy, I'm just gonna need those minutes from you. I know you get them to me pretty quickly because I gotta get that letter out.
Yeah. absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Okay. So the next application on file or for us to discuss is 31 The Strand. So, hi, how are you? So we always ask the applicant to just give us a overview of the project, and then we'll start to have more conversation about
Have a house, I want to have a little bigger house.
it. You have what? I'm sorry.
Like I have a house, I want to have a little bigger.
So what do you want to do?
Well, I first entered the Newcastle world, pretty much just through love of history. I've been collecting antiques for 30 years or so and never thought I could actually live in an antique. So a house became available on Second Street back a bunch of years ago. A gentleman passed away and me and Bob Thatcher rebuilt a really fallen apart house. Kind of did a good job, and then I did the mistake of walking around the corner and saw 31 of the stands for sale and said, "Hey, Chris Cashman, do you think you could sell me another house and sell this one and move me over?" He said, "Sure, we can do this in a couple weeks." We did it in a couple weeks. So I ended up basically moving around the block, which I hear is kind of an old Newcastle thing. And one of the reasons why is because it's on the water, and even though New Jersey is not my favorite in the world, I grew up in New Jersey, and it's not so terrible because it's kind of far away. The thing I noticed when I got in there is that my son had the view of New Jersey and I had the view of a road. And the people across me, and the Meeks are wonderful people, but I really would not like to look at their house all the time when they get up in the morning. So I thought it would be kind of a neat idea to bump out the back, sort of like almost all of the Strand. I believe I'm the only person on the Strand that is not bumped out the second floor heading towards the river. So back a while ago, I had the opportunity to contact a gentleman, get some drawings done, throw some ideas around. Two horrible things happened. He died, and someone else in my family died. And so I had to spend a large amount of money and other things in my life. And so my wants and needs were left to the side. And here I am, basically 10 years later, finally recovering from all that and getting to the point where maybe we can do this. So that's the basic summary. I originally, and I don't even remember his name because it's just 10, 12 years ago, the first gentleman who drew some blueprints, he did it connecting all three houses. So mine connected to both the adjacent houses that I'm attached to. And since then, we've changed the idea to just be attached to one of the houses by us and then have a gap between our house and the house of the reference. Just makes it seem like there's some inconvenience and some problems. So we have two sets of drawings that you have there. The more recent ones were just submitted by a relatively new construction company. They're actually neighbors of ours over on Brookside Drive. It's a roofing company that also just does additions, and so the new drawings are by Two Brothers Roofing.
think
And
you
so
have-
All right, we have Pierce.
We have one set of drawings, which is I believe, the older one.
Okay, would you like the other one?
Well, when were they sent in?
Last week.
Jeff, you have to get your staff. You got to talk to your staff. Like,
Send them in the-
I think I
You
have
okay?
some copies of it. I don't know if I have 5.
what?
Can get you one if you want.
Yeah, we only
Look
have
at it, pass it around.
Pierce, right? Anybody
We
get?
we have the ones that show the adjacency with both sides.
Yeah, that was the old drawings, and I don't think that's the new.
Just looking at
I mean, it'd be nice, I think aesthetically, it would look good and you know, kind of have more of a kind of a Newcastle look to it. We're all kind of neighborly, but this is the adjustment with the offset to the side. And I don't
Jeff,
know
can
if
you make
they
copies of this?
have a copy of the sheet here.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, they helped Jeff out a little while ago. Maybe they'll help him
Actually, I know one of the officers, yeah, I'll just have to do this.
Did you also, you provide pictures?
So I guess that's kind of the Reader's Digest version. I am so new here. I feel like a 4-year-old talking to you guys, and even though I recognize some faces, I'm new to this. I'm gonna try to learn. The builders have expressed the willing to do whatever they want in terms of getting correct windows, correct siding. Again, I collect antiques. I want this to be real. I want it to be solid. I want it to be stable. I want it to be historically accurate. And I wanted to be in.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You have a structure, you want to add an addition to.
A second floor, right?
Yes.
On
Just, you know,
top of the
a bunk
kitchen.
out that's just in
partial
accordance
second
to my,
What about, is an addition going toward the river or is an addition of a second floor?
It's a vertical addition. It's not the
It's a
footprint.
vertical
It's a
addition.
vertical addition on a portion of the back.
See,
yes. So it's gonna be right above my kitchen.
Right.
So there's already a first floor footprint, so it's not changing the footprint at all of the building, but adding the second floor that would attach to and then
adding a second floor farther back from the street.
How far out is it going?
85 feet. No. only just up until the end of my lower floor wall. So we'll have.
The kitchen wall, the back kitchen wall is gonna be the limit of your back. You're just going to the kitchen wall.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Just straight up. And that's where, did you ever send pictures?
Yes.
Because we need to have those. Again, this is the whole notion of a complete application.
No. The kitchen is gonna go to the kitchen wall
Oh,
vertically south.
Is
So it's
there
not
a
gonna change.
side elevation showing the present and the hope for it? Showing the change,
Oh, is there a picture showing the
side elevation, either drawing or.
Or a section.
There was a drawing.
There were drawing, there were pictures.
I'm saying
a
a
number
rear
of pictures.
elevation.
There are pictures, there's just not a section, there's not a section, there's a section, but there's not existing in use.
Oh, that is it,
Well,
that's it.
Matches the two adjacent roofs.
I mean, that's the question, that's what, if we
Right.
had in the package, and we'll make sure that the
All right.
pictures help
Where are the
identify
pictures?
that that's what's happening across the properties in the back.
Jeff, where are the pictures?
Is it flush with my house?
Yes.
But
So in other
hopefully she
words, my
sent them all to
window
you.
that's on the side.
Put them in the packet.
Yeah, I know,
It's
they're on the
complete.
back.
What about the other side?
The other side of your.
Which,
window.
which would be Euclid's side.
No, there'll be a gap in there and there'll be a few feet of space between that building and our building. Unless they agree to say, to go right up next to it, but last time we tried this, it wasn't happy.
Should Mrs. Belford have the same opportunity to have a space to work?
Oh, she should. She's already agreed to be okay with us attaching.
Well, what's gonna happen? So I lose that soffit that's on the side?
Well, somehow we'll stop with them together. That's why I like these guys, that they're actually roofing experts. So they'll be able to join our
Because
houses.
the soffit comes out a little bit, and
Yeah, it
then you
does.
have then you have my wall.
Yep.
And with my window, so you're talking about it up against the soffit, or I lose the soffit and it's up against my, wall.
That's a really good question. I guess it depends on what you would like and what would
I
integrate better
just
structurally.
spent, to do that addition on my house, I can't, Rispoli did it.
Yeah, I
I've
remember.
spent tens of thousands of dollars to do that.
Oh,
So,
that she was here.
um,
I was like, I recognize.
I guess it's water under the bridge, but it would have been better had it all been done at the same time.
We were talking to
Because
the Rispelli's
To
too.
me to finish that side of the wall was at least $3,000.
No, I will be paying for whatever we need to do to make it right.
I know.
Well, should Mrs.
I know.
Belford
But,
have room to tend the side of her house, I think is the question. It's a very tricky thing because a soffit.
There's a little notch.
Comes back in, it's a difficult one.
And what does she do with her window? She has a window on that side. It's useless.
We'll pay to have, yeah.
So you would be closing that up. and paying to do it.
I'll put a pretty piece of art.
What,
I'll put a pretty piece of art on the inside, so it'll look beautiful.
you being facetious?
No, not, I got beautiful art in my place. I've got so many pieces of art.
Well, I have beautiful art in my place.
We'll make sure.
Was this so you're the neighbor to the one side?
We are contiguous to
Yeah.
his house. I'm
Okay.
on one side, your butch is on the other side.
And
And you
then-
have a free window in the room.
I have,
Right.
yes, I have a,
A crank out one.
window.
And you like that window.
You know,
I think you,
let me be honest, Jeff has a right to be comfortable in his house. I always felt that way. And, they want to change a sitting area into a bedroom, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to sit, and I can understand that and would like him to be comfortable. On the other hand, I just spent
Yeah.
thousands of dollars on this, addition and, to complete that side of the house, which was done beautifully and,
It's gorgeous. I look at it every day.
that. And, again, it's water under the bridge, but it would have been nice had I not
Yeah.
had to finish that side of the house.
And that's when we talked to the Rispolis and they're like mid-construction, we're like, hey, we could do this. They're like, hey, we'll get back to you.
I don't think Rispoli gets to change his plans when they come in the Historic Area Commission, but you're new here and there'll be a lot of lessons learned. It's important for you to reach some satisfactory agreement with your neighbor.
because I think, for us, there's two things here, which is
And that's
one,
not something for hack.
I don't have.
Yeah.
that.
for us, there's the materials. I mean, if I put my architect hat, I know that on the side where you're now doing the 2 feet right from the property line, Jeff, to allow, your neighbor has triple window and you're putting a double window. So it's gonna make for interesting visual dynamics.
That's like Ray Coupon.
But
next door.
again, that's not the hack purview, as long as it meets code.
Yeah.
Building code.
Light. It's good to have a little more light there.
I mean, it's in essence gonna be a light well for both of you. And I know that hack in a roundabout way does deal with, setbacks, but it's more in the context of a new addition, a new footprint, not so much a setback at the second story of what you're trying to do. So yes, it's,
I mean, just out of curiosity, you have 4 windows across the front. I'm assuming that's a lot of light coming in the room. Did you really need the windows on the side?
Do I need them? No, nobody needs them.
I mean, just
Are-
in regards to, the two. Not to say they were there first and you weren't. If it was the opposite way, it may be different, but I'm just thinking they have windows there.
Yeah.
You could have all the windows across the back, which I'm assuming would be a lot of light. How much light are you actually going to get with those 2 windows? And to some compromise, if you didn't put the windows in, maybe the neighbors, we might have a slightly happier group. But I'm just thinking, I don't know how much light you're gonna get out of those 2 windows on the side. That's all.
There's a whole lot of rules of thumb that go back about 1,000 years. That person who's there first has to be made whole and satisfied by someone who comes and changes.
Well, not,
Well, it's like when you go to
Not
school,
always,
first come,
but-
first served. And I'm definitely second served here, so.
That's outside.
I'm here begging and pleading and, if I can do this, great. If not, then I'll just cry for the next 20 years and just be real sad.
I mean,
That, the commission likes to try to accommodate.
yeah, we're trying to find a
requests.
happy medium for everybody. That's all. So it was just a question.
and Jeff, there is, for code, typically there is like, if you have a property line, there is like,
Nobody asked the building official yet about the window. No, you're probably not gonna put 2 windows 3 feet apart on a property, apart.
For a reason.
Should be a
for
party wall.
reasons of.
If you build your wall to be a 2-hour rated wall, then
Fire rating.
Mr. Vukovic could keep his windows in his side.
Fire.
so there's a proximity, so there are other code issues other than, so that's where the 2 feet that are here. That's not necessarily our purview.
Mr.
Somebody needs
Vukovic
to
found that out about his, remember his garden, your windows on the Reed House garden?
Right.
Remember they had to restrict the amount of glass on the Reed House garden side for your addition? And the law has evolved a little bit, but it hasn't changed that much.
Right.
You just don't want one thing to make it very dangerous for both of you. So
It's a light.
maybe if you sprinkler both buildings, you might get that sort of a variance, but that's not gonna happen.
And the
You
strand
just- you
burned
just
down.
can't have a fire
Yeah.
blowing
Yeah.
through one building.
The homes are so close together, if, appropriate fire barriers,
Right.
holding the town goes up.
Okay, so are we saying the windows could be an issue?
But what we're saying is that the windows, if that appears to be less than 3
2
feet, so the wall's gonna be a 2-hour rated wall.
Yes.
And then no window. And then when you do that, you've got it, it's interesting, you're gonna need it to really hold up a little more weight than
Structurally.
you might expect, so you're gonna have to make sure that your ceiling joists, your floor joists for the second floor are just substantial.
Okay,
And
because it's less than 2 feet, I'm just taking notes. Less than 2 feet, no window. No windows
Less
here.
than 3 feet.
Less than 3 feet, no windows. So these are out.
That's a fire code rule, so.
Yeah, I know, I'm just taking
That's-
notes, right? Yeah. All right, so just, because when we say whatever we might say, if we say as presented, that's not really the case, so we're gonna have to just make a comment about that. All right, windows out. Okay. Jeff, anything else in relation to fire code?
No, I don't think so. I think, we gotta worry a little bit about, Barbara's house to make sure that,
Right.
The wall is safe and that it's safe, but that's not very tough to do. That's,
And I guess, Jeff, when we were talking about this before, and we'll all, I guess, maybe meet with Leila, which I've heard your name a couple times, very nice to meet you the first time. But our architect, me, you, and then we should
Sure.
meet together, make sure that all the materials are correct, that
Absolutely.
I hear you're the genius in town that has all those pieces of information. So I wanted to do that before this meeting,
Mhm.
but there was a couple of revisions we had to get done. just
Yeah, I
to get
realized that when
this
we
here.
first had the email exchange that we were working on the thing.
So,
That's
so
fine.
we'll do that very soon. We'll do that.
Okay.
And make sure we try to get some of those details. Correct.
Okay,
I know
so,
this may be preliminary. I apologize. I don't want to waste your time.
no, it's
So
okay.
you're not asking for a decision, you're asking for a discussion
No, he's
Well, yeah.
asking, he's on the agenda.
Yeah,
as
if you give me
a-
the decision, yeah. I mean, again, it's more for materials, just to
Right.
make sure that we have the correct windows and the siding and all these things are correct. But I think when I mentioned it to the new architect and builders, that he actually made some of those notes on there, and it may be perfectly correct.
He did indicate wood windows, which is good, except the thing is like in the siding, he's saying siding to match existing house. Which is kind of like, is it wood siding? I know the previous drawings have architectural shingles. This one, I mean, no, that's EPDM, EPDM, that is similar. So just, what's the intent for the siding? Is it wood? Trying to remember the back of your house, that's wood.
I think that mine is wood.
Yeah, I said, so those are kind of details, but yes,
The only thing I want to do is make it a different color because it's almost the same color as the.
color is actually one thing where you do have flexibility because it's considered maintenance and.
Well, Layla, we're just gonna say,
I want to make it something.
if it says siding to match, we're just gonna say, well, we're gonna take that out and just say wood.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it does indicate wood windows, the window schedule.
tonight. 3 divided lights,
I don't,
with 3 divided lights.
In the back of the house.
in the back of the house, that is one thing where as long as, now, and it is wood. As in not wood clad because it's wood indoor, it is wood, but we can be very clear about
I
that.
can't tell you, we'll have to.
So we're just gonna say wood siding, right? We're gonna say wood windows.
And it's no disrespect, I've had people say, of course they're wood on the inside, I said, yes, but I'm concerned about the outside, and they were like, wood clad, so.
You know, wood windows, wood siding.
They have months, you want them glued on, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with applied months.
You
Doesn't have
don't
to
want
be
to snap in.
Is it brick or stucco?
applied months.
Neither. I think it's all old fashioned.
Well, do you want them 6/6? That's what
The front.
they don't have to be 6/6.
But and actually a little bit at the back is you can see a little bit of the brick through that. one of those. And actually, one of the things I want to do is when they cut through the building to do it, I want to keep some of the exposed brick in there so it has some of that character.
And that's on the interior, so you can have it any way you want.
So with the wood window,
What are your current?
I'm concerned about my soffit,
no, we got,
you know,
We
and
understand.
I'm really not understanding completely how that's gonna work.
I- I-
What-
I could suggest that his attorney, or it would just be his architect, not his attorney.
Yeah,
His architect will sit and explain things to you.
okay.
And you might say, I don't agree, or you might say, I love it. But whatever you say to him is what you say after he's received, given you an explanation. And that should be added to the drawings that are brought up for us to review. Is that a good suggestion?
Yeah, we got it. We gotta make it-
But
make it
is there
happen.
an architect?
Who is the architect?
George. His name is George. Don't have his firm information, but we'll get together. We can get together this week if you want.
Yeah.
He's a
Well,
super nice guy.
Does he have a seal, is he a Delaware licensed professional architect or engineer?
I hope so. We'll find out
Okay,
soon.
yeah, well, whoever submits these plans.
Has to be signed and sealed.
George is
I think we-
two brothers rooming, and it just says he was.
He works with them and
Okay.
they have an architect that will, I guess, approve, sign off, stamp, seal.
You might want to get to know him very well.
So, let's just think about this. So Leila, just if we approve, right, our portion with wood windows, wood siding, no windows on the side. What did the roof, what architectural, what do you want to say for the roof?
I mean, it's a low slope roof and that's just, it's fine, there's no different drawing. I have it as an EPDM roof.
So you're okay with that?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, can we get him far enough along to approve with but, he has to do 3 more things,
I mean, I would think so. We can always
Right?
say that.
so he doesn't have to come back in January,
Yeah.
Right.
you guys can finish it off.
We can finish it off with tier one.
I want to talk with his architect.
We-
and see how
yeah.
that's
Yeah,
going.
we're gonna put that, in there,
I
yeah.
think I would suggest that we wait and see what his architect proposes to us and that he is in fact a Delaware architect. We're getting on thin ice. Okay, we don't even know if these are legitimate drawings. No reflection on you, but you don't know,
Well,
right?
There are 2 separate approaches, which is one, anything that has to do with a Delaware registered designer, architect, engineer is all about, compliance, regulatory compliance, getting a building permit, and you will not get a building permit if you do not have a proper design professional doing the work.
I learned that when I was working with Bob Thatcher.
Yeah. So that's clear. The other part is, these are architectural drawings showing a design intent, showing a clear concept and showing design elements. So if you were to approve the design as presented here, because we're not going to get into the review of technical details of how the soffit is attached to the adjacent roofs. That's a constructability issue, and it's a building permit issue. We're also not going to get into the structural stability of because now that you're going to have a fire rated wall and fire rated windows, and it's going to be heavier. All that has to be within the structural design of the structural review. On the other hand, if we're saying architecturally, it's going to be a 2nd-story addition with wood windows and wood siding and appropriate low slope roofing. That the other parts about the constructability, the stability, the structure, and the detailing of the connection is something that HAC.
We
is
wouldn't
not
have
gonna be
anything to
reviewing.
say about that
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, no. I have a different opinion. We have a recognized possible disagreement. We don't know yet about how these 2 homes will abut one another. And how that may change with architectural revisions between now and when everyone is properly satisfied. I don't think we move ahead until we see that we have a set of drawings that reflects what's going to be built, including listing what are the materials to be used.
Well, we're telling them what materials to use, so that's one.
And I'm not gonna do this unless Barbara. I mean, that's just, I care enough about her that we're not gonna do this unless she's saying.
Well, we're here to represent the sensibilities of the community. I don't like to see things get off on the wrong foot. spend another month, spend some, find out where this architect is. Get some
I'm
proper
not going to
drawings.
do this in the middle of winter when it's really terrible.
It's
So-
difficult. This is, time to meet people.
All right,
But
so
but
just,
let's not introduce conflict, consternation into the community. Let's allow things to take the proper form, have the neighbor come in and say, I'm quite content with this, either by design or by some type of compensation. And then I would feel very good about moving forward on it. I'm just one person. There's 5 votes here.
Yeah, I can only speak to the process within HAC and the purview that's sort of my purview to make a recommendation from a technical perspective. And where we do look and do not look, you know, in terms of neighbors. And there's certain things like, for example, you are entitled to put a party wall if it's, you know, and if it has to be fire rated, then by code it's acceptable, but that's not for us to determine. That's the building code's purview. So, but obviously, you know, from what's my purview in terms of what I see in front of me, that's what I can say about the materials, that the windows are indicated, that the design would meet the guideline, that the siding that says match existing, if that were noted, and we've done in the past saying if it is, but I'm not saying but one way or the other. But I have enough elements here to say yes, that this is something a design as presented that would meet the guideline. Other issues have to be dealt with the proper reviewing authority.
right, so it sounds, oh, please, go ahead.
I'm just wondering what the rule is for the amount of space the homeowner has to take care of the side of the property.
Between two property lines, and it is, the window is 3 feet. If it's not, is it 2 feet that you have to recess 2 feet minimum?
Do you mean,
No, it's an interesting bunch of common law, but 2 feet you can certainly maintain a property at 2 feet, because you could, especially if you're gonna walk on the roof, you might want to put an easement in there to make sure that you can trespass on the neighbor's roof in order to be able to repair the windows, clean the windows. And I don't think that part's in contention right now. I've got they haven't even found out yet that they have to get an assessment of their house and then assess this project, and I can't let them build 50% on the value of their house because it's in the floodplain. So you've got to, there's a whole bunch of rules they haven't run up against, but right now they want to build this addition, and both adjacent property owners are, you know, can live with this. I think
Because also, I mean,
it is not the streetscape. This is the rear of the
Back,
house
the back.
facing the river.
and they're also, they already share a party wall on the first floor.
You-
So if they want to
exactly
get
right.
on the second floor to access that wall with the windows, actually the neighbor would have to be able to climb onto the roof.
Right.
Onto the roof of the first floor of the adjacent property to be able to get access there. So in a sense, they already have the shared party wall. It's just that at the second floor, 2 neighbors went forward and 1 neighbor had not, and that's why the windows were put there, but it was allowed to put windows on the party wall. But always the understanding, if your neighbor comes to build something, then,
There are plenty of windows and party walls in this town.
Yeah.
My predecessor, I wonder if the reason he lost his job was because he permitted windows in a party wall for new construction. And that's something that preys upon my mind terribly. No, it's you just can't do that. It's not generally safe.
Yeah.
But
so, Matt, what do you?
Yeah, although I hear what Kevin's saying, that the idea is to have, you know, further understanding by the neighbors and an agreement. I think that's something that can be addressed after we move on the back elements that Leila has proposed. And that can be either taken into consideration by the applicant to either then withdraw or to not do it or to move forward. But I don't know that we should stop the process if we're okay with all the other elements. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think we are approving the materials, correct? It's not going to move forward unless it meets I mean, we can't say anything about I mean, beyond this is in the purview of Jeff and,
Well, you've got the building bulk,
right,
you know, you're approving the mass going there between the other two. And you've got the
Right.
materials that they're constructing it out of. And we don't want to get in the middle of some giant lawsuit between three different homeowners. But if all of that's not gonna happen, then
Right, I mean, I feel like there's things that, Jeff needs to get done to get through the building permit. Right, we're just the hack permit, the hack application. The building permit has its own rules and regulations that you're gonna have to follow to get through. And one of them will be the drawing, obviously, that would show specific to how you're gonna connect to your neighbor's house that you've all agreed upon before it goes to building. Does that
Is
make
that
sense?
true? Everyone has agreed.
Well, she would just like to see and understand more what it's gonna look like.
I don't want what was done on my house to be ruined in any kind of way. I've spent thousands of
So
dollars.
you don't
on
agree
it.
with what the discussion is at
It's
the
an
moment.
aesthetic thing, you know, and
And you need, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you need some additional understanding. or-
yes. Yes,
And me too. She has got an interesting kind of.
it's
Section
it's
there.
aesthetic and I don't want.
Would you be
to-
willing to pull this
You know,
until she's satisfied? Do you feel that you can satisfy her with further discussions?
Well, I mean, we'll sit down with the architects this week. We'll have them come out. We'll stand up there. We'll kind of talk about things and I'd like to go through the concept if a lot of people agree, and then again, work with Jeff on the code things and make sure we do it correctly. And then
Can we limit this to approving materials?
That's what we're doing.
We're approving
We're only
massing and
materials
materials.
and materials.
I mean, that's what I would recommend, just in terms of.
Like he will come back or not?
He doesn't have to come back. He's gonna have, everything else that we're talking about is going to be for the building permit. And then it goes to Jeff. Doesn't need to come back to us after we approve the materials and mass.
And there's no concern, I mean, I have a concern that as his architect makes adjustments and changes to satisfy a neighbor who's already there, that we're gonna end up with something that perhaps is significantly different. I'm not saying that I know that, I'm just concerned that it will be different because of the adjustments that need to be made to satisfy.
Well, I
Well, we
think,
can put that in the motion.
because if it's changed, it's not the same design that's approved.
Right.
So if they come back and they say it's not gonna work with the neighbor, so I'm pulling it back 2 feet. It's not gonna work with the neighbor, so I actually wanna, so that's like sideways, right, laterally and setback, or it's not gonna work with the neighbor, I wanna pull back the back wall by 2 feet. That's a different design. That is not something that's approved. That has to come back to HAC.
Right, that would be a
That's the
design
premise, right,
change.
Jeff? If that's a design change, then it because.
And Jeff would tell you that it has to come back, right?
Do they have the drawings there of what you're planning to do?
Do you want a copy?
Yeah.
But it doesn't-
Would
I
have
don't
liked-
think I have a copy.
the issue of the soffit.
The soffit
that's
isn't,
not
the issue on the
something-
soffit isn't on this drawing. This is,
Yeah,
It's not
So-
detailed.
Right.
So it can't be shown and therefore it can't be explained accurately to you.
it's not a building drawing.
It's a technical.
I don't know how
Right.
that's gonna look.
Right, exactly. You
With
need
my
other
soffit
drawings.
there.
That's what we're gonna have to.
So, yeah. Layla, just going back to the windows, so these were 6/6. Is there? I don't know why they showed 6/6, but I'm just curious.
I don't know if there's a preference, honestly, when they are actually would be, and the lower ones are 1/1.
Right,
The lower ones, the lower windows are 1/1, correct? I mean, you can have different breakdowns of lights, you know, within stories. I think, you know, the 6/6 is nicely consistent with the wood and with the character.
That usually is a little more historically.
So I think that works. And if at some point ultimately the first 4 windows are upgraded, then that would be different.
they did the lower section, it was an addition in the kitchen,
Mhm.
and they just put nice windows in there, but they're not as historically accurate.
Yeah, so the fact that there's, and there, you will have tons of different tiers, you can have different types of.
What is the size of the
breakdown.
space on the other side?
2 feet.
This space,
Yeah.
2 feet.
So where it says 2 feet, 12 inches. Oh, that's the floor choice. Okay.
That's that much space.
And that's what some of it is.
I mean, any other thoughts? I mean, we can make it very specific.
What would be the problem with, allowing that soffit doesn't stick out very far?
Miss, you have fine observations, but they can only be answered by an architect providing a drawing that can be explained and understood.
That's why
Any
you have to
waving
be.
of hands or using of words can lead to misunderstanding. And I think, and this is maybe just my opinion, but one of the roles of the Historic Area Commission is to serve the interests and the sentiment of people. It's not to be a rubber stamp for a book. Respect the sentiments of the people of the town. And I'm being very sensitive to that. And I believe you have a good neighbor who's very sensitive to that too.
Yes.
My personal interest is seeing a next step be taken to satisfy you. To satisfy you and other neighbors. That's just, I think, a decent thing to do. And you have a number of ways to satisfy your neighbor. Now, if we do have a motion that cites your agreement to what finally is done, that window of your agreement has to be finite. We can't give you 20 years to exercise your judgment.
If I may
Because
say,
he has things he has to do and business commitments he has to make. So that at what window of acceptance or rejection would be appropriate as the town would see it.
the only thing is, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, I think when we review and approve applications, it has to be for conformance with the guidelines and the standards. We have never determined an application making it conditional to the approval of a neighbor of a final design. It's just not something that I believe is appropriate within the way to keep doing it. I mean, obviously, the input of the neighbors is very important, and PAC obviously takes that into consideration. I just mean in terms of the motion. I
Right.
believe it would not be an appropriate precedent to put that as one of the considerations.
No, our motion won't, it's not going to indicate based on approval of a neighbor. We're just saying if any changes get,
No, I
if
understand
any
what you're
design
saying.
changes, yes.
No, I was
yes,
saying the
okay,
point that was
okay.
being made by
Right,
saying, we can note and we can give a finite, but an approval. That is not something that I believe can be put in the motion.
Right.
Let
At
me
least that's my
assure
perspective.
the neighbor hasn't seen any detail of how the soffit abuts the new construction. It doesn't exist. Therefore, she has nothing to understand to agree to. That's a factual observation. Let's not assume that because we may understand it, that she understands it. That's the whole nature of my thrust here. I want to be happy to see this work take place. But let's not get the cart ahead of the horses.
And I mean, looking at this too, wouldn't it be aesthetically more appealing if it were equidistant between the two existing walls? Let me look.
The roof lines in the back of our houses are quite different. I think Barbara's flatter than ours. So I'm curious about, sort of how Jeff's roof line will interface with her current roof line.
And and I don't want to get too much into the design weeds of the constructability of things. I think, and again, I'm not saying I'm a proponent of coming to the party wall or not, because, they're the pre-existing things. I think just as when you have constructions that have common party walls, but they go up the 2 stories. You have different different roof lines, and you have a whole system from transition from one to the other. It's a constructability issue. I'm not saying it's gonna be done right. I'm not saying it's gonna be done wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't a potential. But that's what typically would happen. Like if you had neighbors who had actually party walls on both, but they were changing one roof because they were re-roofing, they would have a connection with the sidewall and things like that. So I think that's more, that is, and there's a reason when we first got these, I was like, what's happening with the adjacent windows and the neighbors? Obviously, everything is better when it's consensual. And if things, change in terms, that's also something. And to your point, yes, things that are symmetrical are great, but a lot of things in Newcastle are not symmetrical because addition is put on one side. So that's also part of the animation when you look on the back. So yeah, it's kind of, and it's walking that fine line of what we're looking at for being appropriate. Code issues, life safety issues, which for me are the big priority, structural issues, and a combination of things.
I mean, this is the roof line, right? I call it flat to slightly sloped. That's
Yeah.
how I would view it. So,
And Mrs. Belford still has the option, of course, of having 2 feet to work on the side of her property, right?
if
She needs to understand what 2 feet is. She needs to think about what type of garden tools she may take down there, what her plumber and electrician and, maintenance folks need.
No, these are
There's a
not,
lot of questions. and
we're at
I don't want to see this.
we're at the
one
second
get
story,
over
right?
speeding. Sorry,
I was just
okay.
thinking of that soffit issue. I'm sure it doesn't come out 2 feet. So she could still maintain
But
the side
again,
of the
let-
house.
Have an architect do when he gets paid.
Yeah.
Okay, this affects her use and enjoyment of the property that she presently owns. You're the owner. You were there first. Okay, that carries everything in common law. Unless there's some statute that the town has. So she was there first. Let's have her be happy. I think she'll be very happy. I think your architect will do a wonderful job. I'm hopeful all around. Just saying, let's get the wrinkles out. Let's get the iron out the creases. And everyone's happy forever.
So in answering every question, if there's any design change made during that conversation with the architect and the homeowners, and any design change to what we've approved has to come back for approval. That's,
it's in
so
the
we're
application.
approving this, but we are
That
specifically,
satisfies my question.
okay, yeah. But
Thank
we are
you.
specifically
coming-
saying if any
But that-
change is made, it
That's
has to
not-
come back.
That's not,
That coming back does not mean it satisfies the neighbor. It just means it satisfies 3 of 5 votes.
No, if she wants him to do a 2 setback. And they agree and Jeff's okay with it and she's like, hey, I want the same thing on my side of the house, you gotta go 2 feet back. Then she has to come back. It satisfies her and he has to come back for approval for that.
But what if Jeff doesn't agree to it? You've approved a structure.
Maybe arm wrestle? or something?
Barbara could be saying she doesn't approve it and it's already been approved by you.
Hack,
right?
Hack approves, and Jeff, correct from, Hack approves for materials and concept. But if there's a protest about the project itself at the building permit, she would be protesting the building permit, right?
Not everyone, who puts an addition on their house.
if you look at this, it looks crazy stuck to one side like that and then the space. I mean, it's
Ma'am, it may look
anybody,
beautiful.
and layman can look at
It may
it.
look beautiful, you just don't have enough architecture. That's what you need. You need to have a nice discussion with someone that explains things to you. Or perhaps when he's finished explaining, you don't agree with it at all. But those would be your choices.
So, again, going back to your question, so as Jeff just said too, there's where materials a mess, right? Then there's a whole building permit
Right.
department that will take care of the building permit. Who also may say, hey, yeah, you have to do it 2 feet, he's gonna come up with his rules as well. But yet if any design element gets changed during that process, he still has to come back.
Yeah, That's very helpful. I
Okay.
understand it, but I just wanted to make sure that Mrs. Belford realized that this was an option for her.
Yeah.
Right, like the next
all
step
I'm
is
saying.
that, yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Is the building.
I'm not thinking about how it will look or whatever.
Sure.
because
Is there another out? If we approve it, does
That's
she
right.
have another out in
It
the,
could come up to the wall and it may not,
right, but any change, Jeff would have to tell them based on the
Exactly.
conversation
Good.
to come back.
helpful, thank you.
And I'm gonna put that in the motion too, so that we're clear about that. Any other comments or, questions?
Question, is there in fact a drawing today that shows this configuration?
What,
Between the two houses and the soffit, do we have a drawing that shows that?
You mean a construction detail showing the articulation between the roofs? Is that what? is that-
yes, I think that's what he's asking.
No, the construction detail is not here now.
So we don't have a drawing to refer to that gets changed. You
We-
can't change something that doesn't exist.
We're working off this drawing.
Well, does it show it? Because I didn't get the drawings. Did someone circle where it shows that detail? So I can.
We said this is not a construction. This is not a construction drawing. But the only thing we are saying about this drawing is that, so we're saying several things. We're gonna list all the materials. We're going to indicate though that even though this will be to take out these windows because it's on our drawing, so we're just gonna say taking out these windows. And we're listing all the materials and we're specifically saying, if this design gets changed through any part of the process, he has to come back to have for approval. That's what we're saying. And he will not move forward if Jeff, through the building process,
That's
doesn't
a different
appropriate.
step. That's a different step. But again, does this drawing, A1, does it show?
It does not show it.
Okay. So therefore, what might change isn't shown, so there's really no change. I mean, we're talking about changing something that doesn't exist. in front
We're
of
not
us.
changing this drawing.
We might be changing this drawing.
But he has to come back for that. You have to come back for that.
Who comes back?
Jeff would have to come back.
Jeff comes back.
So you're saying if it's unacceptable, the connection, then Jeff has to come back.
Right. With this building, he's gonna have to get builder's drawings done, right? He's gonna have to work through a building permit. We're not the building department. We're just materials.
Among other
Side.
things,
He's gotta do other things.
He's gotta show what the rating of the wall assembly is that he's putting up and how he's gonna maintain that wall assembly exterior in whatever space he allows between the two buildings.
And
So
how
there's-
does this woman notify authorities it's acceptable?
I did. That's beyond my ken.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes.
I know it's not public comment. I know
It's
that.
okay.
He is correct. He is absolutely correct that if in 1 month, it's not gonna make any difference either way, but you, as a commission, will be ensured you will be approving exactly what will be there, which will dictate what materials will be needed. She will be happy, he will be happy. You'll have formal plans by a registered architect. It's a no-brainer. Put it off 1 month. He's not against it. He wants it done right. She needs to be protected. And Mr. Wade's exactly right. 1 month, not gonna make a difference. We'll all come back.
I will say, we have not handled any of the hack meetings that I've been in for 6 years that way.
Okay.
So that is not how we have proceeded, because they are other steps that they have to go through for the building piece of it. So we are materials and mass, right? And we can put in a motion to approve those things with exceptions to the rule, which Jeff now knows. Any changes, you have to come back. But that's what we do. So we haven't worked that way in the past.
Okay.
And we have had many times neighbors coming in and they have had concerns about it, but it's the next step of the process that really gets their concerns answered. So If you showed me a specific construction drawing with a soffit and how it was gonna be designed and how it was gonna look, I still can't make that, I can't have any comment about that because that is not my expertise. So we are mass and materials.
Okay.
Any other, and if we do not, so we can't table the just to give you all the options, again, because there's a date on the application. So we either have to approve with conditions, which we are allowed to do. We can't table it. So we either have to approve with conditions or we have to deny the application.
What are the conditions?
The conditions are the materials, that they use the appropriate materials, that they don't put in these two windows, and that if there is any design element change in the next step of the process, they have to come back to us to get it approved.
So you're essentially approving the design the way it is.
At the current time, yes,
That's what it amounts to. That's basically what you're saying.
but
we're not
but we're approving the materials and this concept and the materials. But he has to go through the building process, the building permit process, which is where your questions are going to get answered. We cannot answer those, even if he came to us with drawings that showed how the soffit was gonna fit in and it looked really pretty. That's it. We are not construction, so we cannot make any comment on that anyway. So he has to have full set of drawings before he gets his construction permit.
So what you're suggesting is, I don't know if this is helpful at all, but if you approve whatever motion you have here, it's possible that this may get hung up on another level
Correct.
and may never be built.
That is a possibility,
one
yes.
step in a series.
Right.
Of steps that you have to go through. We don't issue the building permit.
Right, we
Yeah.
don't issue
Yeah,
the
that's
building permit.
not-
We
We've
just-
identified a disagreement in the community. This commission has opinions about streetscapes. Prominent houses in important locations are reviewed from 5 different sides. We express many opinions about particular types of windows and 3/4 and 5/9. It doesn't, we always have opinions.
We
It's
don't
not
have
as simple as
opinions
the sheer
on the
volume. It's
construction.
not as simple as the sheer volume of the description of the construction. And the materials. Shape has a lot to it. How it blends into a street has a lot to it. Its siding has a lot to it. The grading of the land has a lot to it. And these are all subjective opinions. Subjective, which is why there is a commission. There's no need for a commission if you can run it through a computer and get a yes, no answer.
Okay,
I suggest ideally that he pulls it until he has satisfied the neighbor with proper architectural drawings. But if not, I would like to see this woman have a venue I'd like to see our hack approval be subject to her agreement with what the architect designs and describes to her. That way she's content, he's content, and we've represented the sentiments of the town.
Just because the process in place with the documentation in place, the assumption, because this is one of the questions we ask, and it's come with the assumption that the neighbor is aware, is here, has agreed in concept to having the window closed so that you may build an adjacent wall and extend that's the parameters of what we're seeing here. And you're here saying that you're expressing some concerns about the detailed constructability, but you're here saying that in theory, and the other neighbors were not, so there's the setback, and that's clear, and everybody's in the room acknowledging that. If there's any concern about the detailing, we would change that option, then you haven't committed to anything set in stone. If, when it goes to building permit, you're like, I don't agree, I don't, there's all sorts of avenues to be able, be it common law or other recourses to go. And any change resulting from that, if you go and say you don't, then the building permit gets held up in that whole other parallel process, which is not as convivial and consensual, which can be sort of adversarial in a different way, but it's set up there for a reason, and the disagreements get resolved. Anything resulting from that, that's a change of what's specifically noted here, and our understanding is you have a concern about a connection, but the principle of the wall being adjacent and the window being closed, that principle is one that you are comfortable with at this point. And should you change your mind once the soffit is an issue, then the design changes, and at that point, it's a new application, it's a new. We have in front of us elements in terms of drawings that have been submitted at other times that have been enough to make a determination of the compliance. And again, I have to be, the guidelines there to set consistent parameters for everybody who comes. And that consistency is what breeds accountability, and also, confidence of things, the same rules are being applied all throughout. And that is like we're seeing a drawing, there's a consensus where it's gotten this far, since you're both here sitting talking about it. The materials meet the criteria, the massing meet the criteria, the setback on one side, the setback on the other side. These are, again, reminding it's second story, it's not first story. You're not blocking anybody from going through the alley or anything like that. So these are parameters that are consistent with previous decisions that have been made based on information that's provided to let the process move to the next step. The next step is the building documents, the construction detailing, the conversations that hopefully you're going to be having, and the resolution. So I always kind of set back. Members of the commission, obviously, I'm not a MOA member. I can just give my professional advice. And then, but by making a determination on this application, it is consistent with how the standards have been applied, with the intent of the guideline, and with the process that's in place to help things move along.
How urgent is it to build this thing next month?
Boy, a lot of people looking at me right now. Thanks.
You can resolve a lot of questions right now.
I'd like to have the board vote.
Is there not a problem that you don't know that the architect is a certified architect?
It has to be.
Well,
We can't get it through Jeff.
When you go through the
you're
building,
approving a document that you don't know was prepared by a certified architect. Is that
Their
what-
document doesn't have to be, it can be
The
a
design-
sketch from a
Yours has-
designer.
Okay.
It's the building that, especially since it's in the floodplain. that has to be.
Curiosity.
Yeah, the design review drawings don't have to be signed and sealed. The building permit has to be signed and sealed, because that triggers all of the issues of responsible design, meeting all the codes, and unfortunately, the liabilities attached to that. But as long as there's a document presented that technically shows a lot of the detailed information to show the massing and the materials and the details, and that's something that becomes appropriate.
any other questions, comments? All right, does, anyone want to make a motion? All right, so I'm going to make a motion to approve with conditions. The conditions are as such. Wood windows 6/6. Wood siding. The appropriate low slope roofing. The windows on the side of the house, where the 2-foot setback is, or that will be removed. And lastly is if during the building construction drawing, any change is made to the design, the applicant has to come back to HAC for approval. Did I miss anything? And I have a second.
I'd feel more comfortable if we identified the neighbor by name and allowed her to come back to us to identify her agreement with what the architect has been able to show and explain. Because I'm not comfortable with the architect has shown and has explained.
I'm sorry, there just isn't a mechanism to allow a third party neighbor to approve something that's being done by
This
one
is-
applicant
this is
within
the
a tax.
We have motions.
never been done.
I don't feel comfortable with that.
It's, my interest is for lack of architect.
But that's going to be, that's something that's going to be addressed in the next step, which is issuing a building permit and having those drawn up. So if anyone has an issue with the design and how it's drawn by the architect, it can be appealed and worked out in this next step.
But this is her last chance to be in front of neighbors. Everyone else is,
What do you mean in front of me?
well, everyone else is, I mean, there's not a team of citizens of the town who are going to vote on the building permit or anything else. This is her last chance to be.
But
Citizens of
I
the town
think,
should.
right, I mean, I think the building department has a lot more power to make sure that this gets done correctly than we do. Because even if they came to us with construction drawings, we cannot make any indication of if it's good, bad, or indifferent. It would just come to us to appease so we can see what it looks like, but we have no implication, we have no knowledge, we are not qualified to say that that construction drawing is, appropriate, good, will work. We don't have that knowledge. We only can approve the materials and the design, not the construction. So there are other levels who have more power than we do on the construction side.
Every level has a role. That's why they were defined. We haven't.
And
apparently
we have defined our
relative
role here
merits.
tonight with this application and what we just proposed. So do we have a second? Sure, we do the
I
second
second.
without any additional comments.
Why can't it be tabled until we have the conference and he comes back?
We can either approve or deny the application. If we deny the application, he actually has the ability to go to the Board of Adjustment and prove and do his case through that process.
Or he could resubmit.
I'm just telling you, I have to give them what their options are. So if we decline the application, he actually can go to the board, right, Jeff?
Yes,
To the Board of
I don't
Adjustment.
think that the developer would want that.
Right.
You'd probably, if I were you, would like them to approve the mess and the materials, and then with the conditions they've said, let it be approved, rather than have them take it to the Board of Adjustment, which is an entirely different animal.
But he could withdraw it and submit it next month.
Yes, he could.
Even if we approve, he can withdraw. But if we decline, he actually can go to the Board of Adjustment. So I think we are in a probably better road going with approve the conditions and let it go through the building permit process.
Again, unless the applicant feels that it'd be better for his relationship with the neighbor to withdraw.
Which he can do at the next step. Okay, right? He can do it any step along the way. He can do that. Yep.
Make sure we're clear.
I don't know if I wouldn't put that in the motion because that's
No,
not
no, no,
more,
no.
right?
Right now, he said he wanted it to call for a vote.
Right, so I made the motion. We had a second. So let's just go down the road. So Matt, approve or deny?
Approve.
Laura approves. Sarah,
Remember, I was gonna use your phone.
yeah,
I was the one that
Yeah.
proposed
Okay.
to do the.
motion is passed.
Give them a letter, so.
All right, Anything? So Jeff, it was approved with those conditions. Okay, so please make sure you work with your neighbors, your architect, the drawings, so everybody is comfortable. So that you can get it through the plan, through the building permit process. And everyone's happy. If there are any changes, it's coming back here. So, we appreciate everyone's input and time. It was a good discussion. If there is nothing else on the agenda, then I call,
I still do have a couple comments, not on,
on the agenda or?
yeah,
Again,
not
specific to
on-
what, to what?
well, clarifications on the step downs and backs of houses, because it seems like with Mr. DeScanis, the way the back was, it had to be a particular way, but here it can be built up. So is it in certain areas? There's certain exceptions.
There are two aspects. You can't see from the public right of way. And there's also the consistency with what's on either side, which it's on either side that there's actually a second story at that area that's adjacent. So it's consistent with the massing, as opposed to the other one where you have smaller scale homes that step down. So you don't want to come and build something that's a big mass with that depth.
Yeah, the only reason why it triggered something was because she has a window, which I would assume means that it juts out. So.
You have a tooth, you have a gap. So literally by the infill, you're going to be consistent with the massing on either side within the street and the purview being the back. So it's not visible from the public right of way. It's a combination. The other one is very visible from Battery Park and from the street and from the park and the parking lot.
Because there's no public access behind that.
Correct, you can't get to those.
So.
And they go into the river even, so you can't, there's no easy access for public view.
So there are two or three different elements that come into play where that's considered something that would be appropriate as opposed to different.
Next question, is it within your ability to require a consultation? And again, I'm referring back to Mr. DeScanis's submission, where it's not like a back and forth where you can request that any petitioner has a time with the architect.
We
later.
encourage them to consult the architect prior, especially in a large project like that, to consult with the architect, which she makes herself available to have those consultations so that there's some agreement before they come before us.
But it's voluntary.
It's voluntary.
It's
though.
voluntary.
We can just tell them.
But it is spelled out that we recommend as part of that package?
In the guidelines, there's a process that's laid out for consultation versus a permit, and that's why the new application has to, you can check it for a consultation. And the consultation's at my level and then a consultation with the commission, yes. So that was the part of the tier one, the staff review, and I'm considered as, staff review. So yes, it's a resource the city has put at the disposition of
But
applicants.
you don't have the power to require it or like strongly recommend?
We can use those words, but that's as far as we can go.
Could get strongly. And last but not least, I know in the past, a little after Moby Dick was a minnow, that the architect had a vote. If he brought it back, does it have to go through council to give the architect an active vote?
Yes, council had changed that by ordinance.
And that would be submitted by this board,
No,
or council can do it?
Council would have to bring that up as an ordinance change.
Okay.
I think it's also important to note that the design guidelines and standards are available to everyone through the city website. You can download this and you can read through it yourself. And that might answer questions about what this committee does and does not do, as well as the things that we consider.
There's also the appendix
I
to
got a
it.
link of it when I started this process to the page and read through everything. It was-
Right, and there's a lot of information in regards to, are you a key or contributing or non-contributing building? So then you know how to utilize the guidelines and where you can go, okay, I'm a key. These are the things I have to do. I'm non-contributing. These are things I can do. So we, on the city website, as Tara indicated, there's a lot of information. It's for people to take the time to review it. And in our application process, which we have to talk to Jeff a little bit about, but we list everything they're supposed to come with, everything they're supposed to look at. I mean, we have done, I feel, all that we can do to make people better educate themselves before they come before us.
I also want to point out, there's also on the website, there's a graphic supplement. So when people don't really understand what we need by massing and all that, it's a supplement that has a very graphic key. It's like, do you want to know what the massing is, what it means or not? And it's a companion to the guidelines that really helps understand what the public right of way, what's the streetscape, what's a viewpoint, and things like that.
Like, for
Excellent,
example, if Jeff would have
excellent
come with a
Huh?
design that he's building, not only the top section, but further out, a double section, that's a whole different ballgame, right? Because now he's extended way past his neighbor. So that's a whole nother discussion. So
Because I just feel, 80% of the applicants probably are working with an architect that will go to the site or clarify with.
you give them a little bit more credit then.
Right. 70%, 60%. But for those that don't know or question what's going on, it might be overwhelming just to say, well, go to the city site more than just a check, putting under there next to the check. We highly recommend, for your understanding of the process, please feel free to reach out, as this is what's recommended prior to coming before the Board of Adjustment, planning, whatever. But again, just a suggestion, because I'm sure we could have probably taken an hour recreation with it. 3 minutes.
And, so, thank you. Any other business? All right, so, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you, everybody. Great seeing you.
Okay, so has anybody had a chance to look at 165 East Second Street, the sidewalk? I teased Mr. Vukovic. They couldn't get the 59 DD brick pavers, so they decided they'd try this. I stopped them in the middle. I'm hoping they're out tomorrow,
Let me
but
see.
it's the most silly thing.
They look.
What is it? Hey. So here's my question.
Looks like a zipper.
Well, yeah,
It's
very creative.
That's
what we're here for.
Yeah.
But isn't there some?